Okay guys, so this relates quite a lot to my general message that I advocate for, the general stance I advocate for on this channel. But I think it's worth talking about on its own, not only because I think it's a good reflection of my message, it's a good way of illustrating it, but it's just worth talking about on its own. And that is the question of how much you should worry about tenses. And I'm going to be talking mainly about ancient languages, but I think it's relevant to modern languages as well. So, the way I want to start this off is by asking you to imagine a time when you've met someone who's not a native speaker of English, and they'll say, sometimes they'll slip up on tenses, or on the sort of sequencing of tenses. So they might say, this is a hypothetical example, but maybe they'll say, I will be happy when I will have finished my homework, or I'll be happy when I will finish my homework, or something like that. Now obviously that sounds alright, but it sounds slightly jarring to a native English speaker, where we would more instinctively say, I'll be happy when I finish my homework. And we see instances of this all the time. Or people will say stuff like, they'll say I was going instead, where they should say I went. Or they'll say I do when they say I am doing. Little things like that you see all the time. Now, obviously, as I already said, it sounds quite jarring to a native English speaker to hear that kind of sound, that sort of way the language is expressed. But the message is crystal clear, really. We know exactly what the person means, and that to me is way more important than accuracy. Because the truth is, it's an incredibly difficult thing to really pin down the accuracy of tenses and tense sequences and the aspects of the tense in a foreign language. And is quite small, return of investment in the initial stages. Now, how does this relate to, let's use the example of Latin, which I think is probably best for ancient languages. So, obviously, how, I talk about this a lot with Latin, but the way Latin is taught is these tense sequences and, aspects and all these, subjunctive case, all this stuff's really drilled into you. And you're really forced to think about it in that way. But the funny thing is with Latin, you have even less of which is a written language. You're not going to speak it. You have even less of a reason to. Well, you might, but you have even less of a reason to need to learn the tense sequences and aspects and all that kind of bullshit, in my opinion, because first of all, like I was saying, it's primarily a written language, and most people are learning it to learn how to read the language rather than how to speak it in the first place. So even if it was jarring, it was a real deal breaker to speak in the wrong tense sequences or the wrong tense or the wrong aspects. Even if that was a real deal breaker in a foreign language, which it isn't, which we just talked about, it still wouldn't matter for Latin, because you're not producing those tense sequences to start with when you're reading it. And secondly, you don't even need to identify these tense sequences in the first place. Now, if you're studying at a very high level, these tense sequences are quite important, and they convey certain things about, they might convey certain ideas that are worth exploring, like in the, this is ancient Greek, but like in the New Testament, it's like, what's the difference between the imperative moods and the subjunctive moods, or the, how should we take an imperative statement more than a subjunctive, causative statement? There's all that nice conversation to be had. But just for day-to-day, basic reading of these languages, it's not detail you need to even think about going into. You shouldn't even be beginning to think about that. All you really need to identify is the meaning of the verb and the person of the verb. So, like, is it I, you, he, she, it, we, they, you? And as long as you can do that and identify the clauses around it, tense kind of, you can fill in tense for yourself. It doesn't really matter. And the other thing is, a lot of time in Latin, they'll break their own rules. They'll use the present tense in the past to convey the historic present. They'll slip into the indicative instead of the subjunctive because it fits into the meter of the sentence in a if clause. And then the other thing is, the best way to learn these constructions is to expose yourself to them. And until you've exposed yourself to them, you can't really... that's much more effective than just sitting down and learning them. So, anyway, I hope this makes sense. I hope you get the sort of... you guys get the point that I'm driving at. Let me know if this is helpful.